Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome you to the session number 11, which will be dedicated to the fuzzy natural logic. The first presentation will be given by Petra Murinova, entitled Fuzzy Association Rules on Data with Intermediate Quantifiers. Petra, the floor is yours.
Pleasure to be here and to introduce a new approach, which is joint work with my colleague, with Karel Fiala, which is my PhD student, and also with my colleague from Poland, with Kasia and with Ola. I'm very happy that we have started with this approach. Maybe we discuss first our ideas at EUSFLAT. And this work is just in the beginning, but we are happy together that we can apply our theory of intermediate quantifiers. It means expression of natural language, and to work with this theory. So, first of all, our motivation. As I said, natural language is very popular, and to analyze natural data is also very popular. And it was our motivation because we know that there are several approaches when we can find several examples of natural data. And our idea is to somehow analyze this data using expression of natural language and also using special fuzzy association rules. Here we can see some examples. Some examples with concrete intermediate quantifiers. We can see that we can find several examples from economy, medicine, heavy industry, and many other areas. And for today for work, we will focus on economic data. And we will analyze this kind of example. I will explain several more examples later. So, as I said, we will analyze data, and we use our main theories, which are devoted to fuzzy natural logic. It means we will work with the theory of evaluative linguistic expression mainly, and also with the theory of intermediate quantifiers. And together we will use fuzzy Guha method, which was introduced at our institute. And using this method, we can transform crisp data to the membership degrees. I will focus on this method later in the more detail. First of all, let us recall what is association rules. We will work with fuzzy association rules. Generally, we work with this kind of formula. It means we work with some antecedent and also with some consequent. We work generally with some data set, which is the mapping that to each object assigns some attribute. It means we are working with some degrees from interval 0, 1. And also we compute support and confidence. It's general approach for fuzzy association rules. And here we can put some kind of T-norm. The main topic for us is the theory of evaluative linguistic expression, because this expression will be used for the mathematical definition of our intermediate quantifiers. Let us recall that we are working with special expression of natural language. For example, here we can see several examples of this expression. And of course, we can modify this expression by hedges. Here we can see example of our concrete fuzzy set. What is important to say? Very important is to say that this fuzzy set in our theory can be represented by mathematical formulas. And also, these shapes of fuzzy set remain same, but only we can change concrete context for our concrete situation. It is important in our approach. Also, in our theory, we can introduce a mathematical definition of intermediate quantifiers. It means that if we are working with the expression of natural language, like most, few, almost, all, several, many, some, and several examples of these quantifiers, which belong to the group of generalized quantifiers, we can propose this mathematical definition. I will explain this definition on concrete example. We are working with some support, for example, some people, and with some property, for example, people like mathematics, for example. It means we have some universe and we have some property. This is here. And from this universe, we choose the cut of this universe. This is denoted by this symbol, which is compared to the respective universe with some fuzzy measure. And this value is evaluated by some evaluated linguistic expression. Why? Because we want to define several examples of intermediate quantifiers. It means very naturally we can feel that, for example, I'm sorry, for example, here, if we define the quantifier almost all, we can expect that the corresponding fuzzy set, which represent this quantifier, will be somehow extremely big with respect to the universe. It means for this definition of this quantifier, we use evaluative linguistic extremely big. Similarly, we can define several other examples of quantifiers, and we can use other examples of evaluative linguistic expression. It means, for example, the quantifier few is defined by this evaluative linguistic expression. It means we expect that the corresponding fuzzy set will be significantly small with respect to our universe. And now we are going to our application. So as I said in the beginning, we will analyze numerical economic data. It means our goal is to understand the connection between our numerical data, which will be tone, inflation, and inflation expectation. It means we have some communication of central banks, and we obtain, for example, that our tone is positive or negative, or is significantly positive, or is something like around 0. Then we are working with the data of inflation and inflation expectation. Here we can see that we have data from several countries. We have data from these countries, and we have data from 2001 to 2019. And idea is to find connection between inflation, inflation expectation, and tone, and to use fuzzy association rules together with intermediate quantifiers. So, what we are doing? First of all, we have to define context for our CRIS data. It means we have context for inflation, inflation expectation for our tone, and we can see that we define context by real numbers. It means here we can see how look our data. It means we choose some examples, for example, for Albania and Czechia. We have data of inflation rate, inflation expectation, and of our tone. These are data which will be interested in our today approach. First of all, we transform this data based on concrete context using fuzzy Guha method to the set of membership degrees. It means here we can observe that we have crisp data here on inflation rate. Similarly, we can transform tone and also inflation expectation. For today's talk, for your understanding, I will focus on this column. It means we have crisp data of inflation rate. We have context of this group of crisp data. And using fuzzy Guha method, we can transform this crisp data to the membership degree based on evaluative linguistic expression small, medium, big, which is called evaluation trichotomy. It means that, for example, this value is small in the degree 0.442 based on our context. Based on this transformation, using our proposed package, which was proposed my colleague by Michal Burda, And using a fuzzy-Guha method, we obtain several examples of fuzzy association rules with their support and confidence. Here we can see some explanation of this, for example, rule. We can explain this fuzzy association rule by this expression of natural language. It means if tone of central bank's news is medium and central banks are medium experiences in inflation targeting, then customers expect small inflation with concrete support and confidence. It means by fuzzy-Guha method, we obtain several examples of these fuzzy association rules. And now by the second package, which was proposed by Michal Buda in our package, we can use concrete algorithm and we obtain concrete true degrees for several examples of intermediate quantifiers. We choose only quantifiers almost and many for this presentation. And we can see that we can interpret these fuzzy association rules with concrete quantifiers in concrete true degree. For example, this rule can be interpreted using this expression of natural language. It means in almost all or most cases when tone of central bank news is small and central banks are medium experiences in inflation targeting that customers expect small inflation, and this rule or this expression is for quantifier almost all true in the degree 0.22 and for most in the bigger degree. It means that we obtain some interpretation of crisp data using expression of natural language, which are based on fuzzy association rules and also on intermediate quantifiers. Here, I prepare some example how we can calculate the concrete degree of concrete quantifiers. It means that if we have, for example, this expression of natural language, we can see that we are working with the quantifier many. We can use the mathematical definition of our quantifier, which is defined by this formula. And if we have a concrete universe, we can see that we are working more than 2,000 elements in our data. We define or we transform this data to concrete fuzzy set. It means we are working with the fuzzy set which is on the antecedent and also with the fuzzy set which is in the consequent. And by this definition of our intermediate quantifier, it means there is Lukashevich implication between these both fuzzy sets. And together with the concrete fuzzy measure, which is evaluated with the evaluated linguistic not small, we can obtain that there is, for example, this expression is true in our model in this degree. It means what is important for us, we can observe that we have mathematical definition of intermediate quantifiers. It means we can use this mathematical definition for concrete interpretation of natural data. So here is the last slide with this idea for future. Maybe we can observe that, for example, if we have data, for example, here on this place, this value, it is inflation rate based on concrete context, is true for the fuzzy set small in the degree 0.003 and for medium for this true degree. We can see that we obtain very small degrees. It means idea for future is to extend the set of evaluated linguistic expression to use also evaluated linguistic expression which are constructed using hedges, and it means to work with more examples of evaluated linguistic expression and deeply analyze our natural data. So for future, we would like to extend this approach and to use our logical structures of opposition. It means generalized Aristotle square or generalized Peterson square or generalized cube of opposition. And we would like to infer from applying this logical structure from natural data new information, for example, which are not included in our original data. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for questions. Okay, okay, press. Can you use the microphone?
I only want to remark, it's not a question, that for those who don't know the Guha method, the original Guha method was developed by Peter Hayek in 1968. It is in fact the first data mining method which appeared, and only later on, something like almost 30 years later, the data mining was rediscovered, and then finally Guha somehow does exist or not. So my contribution, which was mentioned by Petra, consists in using this classical Guha method and transforming into using of our evaluative expressions and truth values.
For this comment, we had another question.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I have two remarks or questions, yeah, whatever, yeah. So the first is I see this contribution very interesting, by the way, yeah, as a really first step, yeah, in the procedure of applying further logical inference, yeah, according to Aristotle rules, yeah, because what we have seen, yeah, in this presentation, yeah, is just, yeah, it reminds me the formal mechanism which we, for example, use also in functional analysis. Actually, what is proposed, yeah, it is proposed to analyze data, yeah, using formal mathematically expressed expression. I'm sorry for this combination, yeah, because actually what we saw, yeah, so we saw logical formulas, yeah, which we can as formal representation of data, and then actually, yeah, when data comes, yeah, we substitute data into this formula, and we are able, yeah, to calculate, because, yeah, you know, so because of that, yeah, I say that this is a way of representing data, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I will leave machinery, I mean, behind of that, yeah. I consider only the top structure, yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is and therefore I expect really that now base, yeah, because now till now, yeah, we didn't see any influence of logic, yeah, but logic can be applied later, yeah, when you use these formulas and then you infer, yeah, some consequences. So we are happy, yeah, just to have this preliminary step. Another question, if you agree, if my comment is
Yes, you are right.
yeah, okay, so good, yeah, and then, yeah, I would like to propose you to extend this approach, yeah, to what is called multivariate time series. Yeah, so this means that, yeah, now you are working with only two comparisons. Yeah, say if something
Yes.
is estimated as P, yeah, then the consequence is estimated as Q, something like that. Yeah, and P is just a characterization of one event. Yeah, actually. Yeah, but why not? Yeah, to see P, yeah, as a combination, yeah, of other arguments. Yes, because logically you can combine. Yeah,
Yes,
actually.
you
Yeah,
can use
and
the
estimate. Yeah, using again 1 degree, and therefore it will extend. Yeah, you know, so your approach to other more complicated situations. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Can you use the mic? Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for your nice talk. I was just wondering why tone is like a real value. How can you have like a tone to be a real value? Tone, the
Yes.
tone.
Okay, maybe
And-
as a core.
And then in the end, it seems like you have like truth degrees, you know, and then you would choose the one with the highest truth degree, you know, like the proposition with the highest degree. Two questions, basically.
Okay, so the tone, it was the result of the algorithm based on the sentiment analysis when the hawkish negative comments were, well, it was just a scale agreed. So it was a result of pre-processing.
Yeah.
So therefore
what's a
the scale.
pre-processing, but I don't understand it.
Okay, we
Yeah,
can
exactly.
further discuss also because it's based on the dictionary
Uh-huh.
or several dictionaries. So based on the sentiment of words for the whole sentence or even bigger text, it's estimated. And this was just some assumption that this tone would be either negative or positive. So therefore the scale.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
What
And
was
second
what
part?
was the
The second part was, you have like truth degrees, you have different, and you would like, what do you do with them, with these truth degrees? This statement is true to degree 0.33 and the other one is 0.77 or whatever. And what do you do with them?
I
Ah, okay, I think if I may maybe help. This is the information for the expert who interprets them. So then it's just like for him, even if this is not one, but let's say close to one, it's just, well, stating the validity of the sentence. So it's made for interpretation. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, short one then.
Yeah. So I see that you use two steps. The first step, using fuzzy Guha method, you determine some if-then rules, and then you apply quantifiers, intermediate quantifiers. But this fuzzy Guha also use some type of quantifiers to decide if this rule is correct or not. And now it's really strange for me that you apply after this step again new type of like intermediate quantifier to say how it's true. Yeah. So first you consider how it's true from a little different point of view using fuzzy Guha quantifiers, and then again you use this. There is a possibility maybe to combine both together, like both quantifiers from the beginning.
At this moment, I don't know. It's a good question. It's a remark. Maybe I will discuss with Michal at our institute. And at this moment, I don't have answer.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
if I can, yeah, just my guess, yeah, actually, yeah. So, the approach actually is based on the so-called classification of data. Actually, yeah, what is proposed here is to transform numerical data into linguistic characterization. And therefore, these quantifiers that can be extracted from Guha are expressed numerically. And then the next step, yeah, is to characterize them linguistically, and it is done, as I said, yes, so this is my
Okay.
guess. So
Yeah.
it is expected.
Yeah.
It can be done.
Thank you very much. I expected that the discussion will be very live, but thank you for the comment. And let's thank Petra once again. And now I invite the second speaker, who is Peter Sassner, and will give us a talk entitled A First Approach Toward Diagnosing Mood Disorders from Incomplete Data by Means of Fuzzy Natural Logic. Peter, the floor is yours, 15 minutes.
So this is like some topic that is very uncommon for me, Actually, it happened because my student Lucas came to me with this depression problem, and I recommended implicative fuzzy rules and specifically fuzzy natural logic to him. And, we also discussed things in the book, insight into fuzzy modeling. So after the introduction, I'm going to describe this problem. And we applied two types of methodologies of fuzzy natural logic without using intermediate quantifiers and using intermediate quantifiers. So the deal is to apply fuzzy natural logic to diagnose a depressive episode that is present in a major depressive and bipolar disorders. And we used some real data that's available on the internet, but it's a very small database, only 55 patients. And in practice, psychiatric diagnosis relies heavily on interviewing the patient. This is a publication by colleagues from our university. And data obtained using actigraphy only serves like as some aid, some additional information. So, the reason why I recommended fuzzy natural logic to him is like, as Petra said, that this theory takes linguistic expression and human reasoning into account, and you can come up with some conclusions. So we only consider 2 out of 9 symptoms of a major depressive episode. And this is abnormal motor activity and abnormal amount of sleep. And well, usually these symptoms are detected by the patient himself or by his spouse or his or her spouse, something like that. If you want to study sleep behavior, then maybe it's better to use this polysomnography, but this is rather invasive. Otherwise, you can use an actigraph. So this is like a watch-like device. It's very convenient, but it's, you know, not as doesn't give as good as information. The information is not as good. So we had like 55 participants, and 23 belong to the condition group and 32 to the control group. And the condition group participants have either major depressive or bipolar disorder. And so the total motor activity is recorded with this device, and we use this trichotomy, low, medium, high. And we excluded a 4-hour interval from the data because we didn't want to take like physical activity, sports, heavy-duty work into account. So the total sleep time was also modeled using a trichotomy, and we used the expressions low, roughly low, medium, roughly high, and high. And this ActiWatch 4 already has a sleep detection algorithm embedded, so it detects if the patient is, or the participant is awake or asleep. And so as for the states of health, Lucas found this publication by Zadek Zadeh, who's a medical doctor who was working heavily on diagnosing diseases using fuzzy logic, and he suggested this trichotomy. So notice that here we are speaking of well, very well, unwell, and very unwell, which is a slight difference between unwell and unhealthy. Unwell is like not in good health, something like, if you know English, there's a slight difference here. But so we follow the literature, medical literature. So, and then we excluded like the days with the lowest and highest activities. So, because we wanted to record like the typical behavior as far as TMA and TST are concerned. So then actually Lucas came up with these implicatory rules of this form. If the total motor activity is A and the total sleep time is B, then the participant is C. So he looked at the specific literature and came up with these 15 rules here. And afterwards, we employed this local perception function. So the local perception function, refers to a set of contexts. Petra already talked about the context, and a set of evaluative expressions, basically, such that they can be ordered in terms of a chain, can be linearly ordered. And then P is defined as like the sets of these expressions in K, such that, evaluated at this input X, you get a value larger than 0. And then P prime is a subset of P, such that, this is in P prime if and only if this expression, is this extension. The extension is like the representation of this proposition, evaluated at X is maximal in P, and P double prime is the set of these expressions. That's the extension in the context W of X is H, evaluated X is larger than A0, where A0 is some parameters. And in this case, we used A0 is 0.9. So, then when you want to compute this local perception, then you follow this rule. First you take the minimum of P double prime, which are the ones that are bigger than 0.9. And otherwise you take the minimum of P prime. These are the expressions that give a value bigger than 0. If P double prime is empty and undefined otherwise. So as an example, consider this context of total sleep time in minutes, 225, 340, 510. And for a total sleep time of 450 minutes, you get these values for roughly high and high, 1 and 0.98. Both of them are larger than 0.9. And so then you take the 1 according to this here, the minimum of P double prime, okay, in this order. And this will give you high. So then you come up with this rule. If TMA is high and TST is high, then the participant is in a borderline case. So then, using this methodology, Lucas came up with these results here. And you notice that most of the condition group members are either classified as borderline, unwell, or very unwell. And most of the control group members are classified as very well. These were, reasonable results based on the small database and, the fact that these symptoms are not really that significant. So, and then I recommended to Lucas, why don't you use intermediate quantifiers, especially since he already presented some rules to me that looked like you have to use intermediate quantifiers. So the goal was to increase the number of condition group participants that are identified as unwell or very unwell, and to reduce the number of rules at the same time. And this way, we generated 3 implicative rules that evaluate if the patient is unwell or very unwell over a time frame of 7 or 14 days, depending on data availability, because this data is not like you don't have the same amount of data of days for every participant. So we did the best we could, and we used this auxiliary function that boils down to FB of A is the cardinality of A divided by the cardinality of B. And then in order to model these intermediate quantifiers, like almost all and most, you basically employ extremely big and very big as far as. So the rules Lucas presented to me are like this. If the total motor activity is not high almost every day and the total sleep time is roughly high or low most days, then the participant is very unwell. If the total motor activity is low most days, then the participant is very unwell. And like another rule here, note that in the third rule, the and is replaced by an order. So you can reformulate rules like this. If almost all daily TMAs are not high and most daily TSTs are roughly high or low, then the participant is very unwell and stuff like that. Okay, then we used some fuzzy sets in the first rule. for not high, AX not high. So it's like the representation of this proposition, X is not high. And like the xi are the individual components. And like n is the number of days, which can be 7 or 14. And then the extension of the first rule looks like this. You use these intermediate quantifiers, and these intermediate quantifiers are constructed from the regular quantifiers, and these fuzzy sets extremely big and very big. Hopefully we got the notation right. So then how do you apply this? Here's an input. X star is this input, which refers to the total motor activity. It's in counts, and then you apply not high to this vector, and you get another vector, and then you compute the cardinality of this vector, get 13.17, and then you normalize it basically, and apply this FB function. Normalizes it, you get a value of 0.94. So part of the extension of the first antecedent fuzzy set is like this. Well, of course, there's a step in between this and this, but it boils down to this. Then, okay, 3 minutes. Oh, then have to, okay. And so, well, continuing with that, in the end, what we did, informally speaking, is like we looked at the rules and wanted the rule to be completely satisfied, completely true. And for example, you want to know if the participant is very unwell or unwell or undefined, only that. So if since the minimal value of this extension z is very unwell, z that leads to the satisfaction of either R1 or R2 that involve very unwell is 0, the patient is not classified as being unwell. But since the since the participant is not deemed to be very unwell, and the minimal value of the second one, so you get the Lukashevich implication that leads to the satisfaction of R3 is 0.44, which is larger than 0. The patient is classified as being unwell. So with this, we got better results. So 60-point-something% of the condition members were classified as being very unwell or unwell, and a slightly higher number of the control group members were classified as unwell. But overall, we think the second approach was superior to the first one because we got an enormous reduction in the number of rules and also a significant increase in true positives. So that's it, and we want to improve this methodology. Well, collaborations are very welcome. And we also got in contact with some psychologists, psychiatrists, and of course, we want to thank our sponsors, That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. We have time for one question, so that's okay.
Only a remark that your rules with intermediate quantifiers correspond to logical syllogisms, which we are studying together with Petra, and we have a list of syllogisms which are logically valid. It means they hold in our models. Perhaps this information could help in your application.
Yes. And actually, I was thinking of that, these kind of things before Petra gave her talk, So, maybe you're already more advanced, but that's actually one of the ideas I was having. And I also have another former student of mine who did also undergraduate project who is very good and who's excellent in implementation and works also on linguistics. He worked for a company before, so I would be very interested in exchanging some ideas. Yeah.
Okay, so let's thank Peter once again. And now the third talk will be dedicated to conversion in fuzzy natural logic, and the presentation will be given by Karel Fiala. Karel?
This property, which is mainly studied in classical logic. So if we assume classical logic, we here have two quantifiers, universal quantifier and a particular quantifier. We denote quantifiers with capital letters. So universal quantifier are denoted by A and E, and particular is denoted by I and O. In the second column, we can see the formulas of these quantifiers, where S denotes subjects and P is predicate. And we called quantifier positive and affirmative or negative. The negative quantifier if there is a negation at the predicate, and affirmative there isn't negation. So we can see that, for example, A is affirmative form of quantifier of universal quantifier all, and the example of this quantifier in some like common language is for example, all men are mortal. So we have quantifiers and we can study some properties between them. Some of them are contrary, subcontrary, contradictory, subaltern, or superaltern. And what we can see that there is always subject at the position of the subjects and premise is on the position of the premises between all these properties. But at the conversion or in classical logic conversion does that it interchange the subjects and the predicate. So for example, if we had quantifier no dogs are cats, which can be represented by this formula, we can interchange the subjects and predicate, and we can obtain the quantifier no cats are dogs, which we can represent this following formula. And yeah, we can apply conversion to all four previous mentioned quantifiers, but main question which we are work with conversion is if we apply conversion on the quantifier, if it will be the new quantifier equivalent to the original or no. And if these two quantifiers are equivalent, we say that conversion is valid for the quantifier, or in some literature you can find that conversion preserves truth value. And on the other hand, the conversion is invalid if there is no equivalence. So if we assume these aforementioned quantifiers, that negative universal quantifier E, which is an example, is valid conversion. So this example is valid conversion, and it's also valid for quantifier I and invalid for the other ones. Before I move to the next slide, I would like to state that generally conversion is studied in classical logics. So there is some paper when they study it, but in all I read a lot of papers of publication, and you won't find like formulas there. They study the conversions more from philosophical point of view or using Venn diagrams, but you won't find any this type of formula in these publications. So, and what we will do, we will inspect conversion is theory of the generalized intermediate quantifiers in fuzzy natural logic, and their definition was proposed by Professor Novak and was also mentioned in the talk of Petra Morinova. And so we will inspect conversion in this theory. So we will add intermediate quantifiers. So we will have classical quantifiers and also some intermediate ones. And as I said, it's the theory of generalized intermediate quantifiers is defined by Lukashevich fuzzy type theory. And the Lukashevich fuzzy type theory has like these two properties. Of course, it has a lot of more properties, but for this talk, these two are very important for this talk. It's contraposition and double negation. And I will also present some examples. So the correspondent algebra is Lukashevich and B delta algebra. So there is the mathematical definition. So you already saw it in the Petra Mojnova's talk. So I briefly recall that we have some cut of the fuzzy set. So we take elements from the set exactly in the degree of value, or we don't pick them. We have here a fuzzy measure, and so we measure the size of the cut, and then we evaluate it by some evaluative linguistic expressions, for example, very big, extremely big, and so on. Sometimes we need to work with quantifiers with presupposition. So in this case, we will change the definition, or we add these two formulas to the definition. So now we can have define of quantifiers with presupposition. And if we put concrete evaluative linguistic expression, we can obtain these forms of quantifiers. So we again denote them by capital letters, and we denote the quantifiers with presupposition by capital letters with stars. So here we can see that we have quantifier all and some. I will call these quantifiers classical, and we have intermediate quantifiers almost all, most, and many. Of course, we distinguish between qualitative of quantifiers. So we have affirmative quantifiers and negative quantifiers, and the negative quantifier is, for example, this B. So almost all S are not P. So we can see we have negation at the predicate. So it's, and if there is no negation, it's called affirmative form. And we can also distinguish quantity of quantifier. For that, we can use graded Pearson square, or we can use monotonicity of quantifiers. So I will present monotonicity. So by monotonicity, we change the quantity. I have the mistake. There should be quantity of quantifier. So we are able to change the quantity of quantifier by monotonicity. So we can see that the universal quantifier O is like the largest in the terms of size, and the particle quantifier sum is the smallest. So let's finally get to the conversion. So as I said, from the philosophical point of view in classical logic, the conversion interchange subjects and predicate, but doesn't change quality or quantity. And in classical logic, it's valid for quantifier negative all and affirmative sum. So if we use our definition, we can see that we want to prove these formulas, as we can see that it is easily provable. But let me note that for the formula A, we are able to prove because we use Lukashevich fuzzy type theory. But if we use instead, for example, BL logic, we won't be able to prove this because Lukashevich fuzzy type theory, there is axiom contraposition. So basically, we need some logic with as contrapositions to be able to prove this. But we have Lukashevich logic, so we are fine. So by philosophical point of view, the conversion is invalid for quantifiers A and O. So these formulas shouldn't be provable, and they aren't provable. And I will show the example which show that they are invalid. So we have some model. I record that you use the corresponding algebra is MV delta algebra. We have universal with 3 elements. There is our quantifier A and the formula. There is like the converted one. So the A, which we get, we apply conversion to A, and we have the fuzzy set, which represent the subject in our model. And here we have the fuzzy set, which represent a predicate in our model. And we can see that in our model, the truth value of quantifier A is 1, but the truth value of quantifier A conversion, so we interchange the subject and predicate. In that case, we obtain that the truth value is 0.19. So we can see that we didn't get two equivalent degrees of truth, so the conversion is invalid for quantifier O or affirmative O. But still, we can use something which is called conversion by limitation on quantifier A. But in this case, we change quantity of quantifier. Basically, we change quantity of quantifier from all to some, and for quantifiers affirmative sum, there is conversion which is valid. So in this case, we obtain this formula, but let me mention that now we don't get equivalence, but there is only implication. So, and let's move to the intermediate ones. So for generally from like philosophical point of view, conversion shouldn't be valid or is invalid for intermediate quantifiers. So these conversions are invalid. So if now I will focus on the example with the most. So if we have example that the most football trainers are people over 35 years old, it isn't equivalent to the quantifier. Most people over 35 years are football trainers. So we can see that, like, generally from philosophical point of view, it shouldn't work. So I will present example that, of course, that in our theory or Professor Novak theory, it also doesn't work or is invalid. So we have our quantifier. Most football trainers are people over 35 years old. We can represent it by this formula. Again, we have some model of theory. We have universe with 5 elements. We represent subjects in our model with fuzzy set B, this fuzzy set, and we represent predicate in our model by fuzzy set A, which looks like that. So similar as we can see in the presentation of Petra Murinova, so we can evaluate this example, this fuzzy sets in model, and we obtain this truth value. So this quantifier or this example in our model it has true value 0.93. Basically, what we do, we apply cut of the fuzzy set, so we pick elements from the B, or we pick them exactly in their truth value, or we don't pick them, and by this we want to pick like the cut of the fuzzy set which give us the highest truth value. So by red, we can see which fuzzies cut of the fuzzy set is used for computation. This 0.9, because we have cut of fuzzy set, Lukashevich implication to A, so we have 0.9 implies 1, 0.6 implies 0.46, 0.49 implies 0.49, and 0.5 implies 0.47. So in this part, we obtain 1. And in this part, we use a fuzzy measure to measure the size of the cut of the fuzzy set. Then we evaluate it by linguistic expressions, and we obtain 0.939. So here we have 1, here we have 0.939. And if we use conjunction, we obtain this final result. So this example in our model is 0.939. So let's do the conversion. So now we have the most people over 35 years old are football trainers. So we can represent it by this formula. Again, we have the same fuzzy sets, but now we will do cut from the A because we swap the subject and the predicate. and now we can obtain the truth value 0.8. So we can see that in this case, we obtain the truth value which is 0.9 or over 0.9. Each we do conversion, we obtain different truth values. So the conversion for the quantifier most is invalid. Okay, thank you. I will end soon. So similarly as for quantifier all, we can use something which is called conversion by limitation. And so it means that these formulas are provable. Again, we are able to prove only implications. And finally, end to the why it can be useful, because let us assume that we from data, for example, in approach which was presented by Petra Morinova, we obtain that quantifier no Nobel Prize winners are young people, and we obtain that it has truth value 0.8. That means mathematically this. And we know that conversion is valid. So now we can from that infer that quantifier no young people are Nobel Prize winners, and the true degree of this quantifier is 0.9. So we can do, instead of again like counted by algorithm, we can use conversion, and we like immediately know that it has the same true degree. For the conversion by limitation, the result is not like that good, because from quantifier, almost all people who do sport are healthy people. It has, if we assume that it has truth value 0.6, we apply the conversion by limitation, or we can apply, but we get like the small quantifier. We get some healthy people do sport, and we don't know exactly the truth value. We know the interval from which the truth value will be. So in that case, is from 0.6 to 1. So to the future work, so there are also in the classical case other immediate inferences which are connecting to the conversion, and its obversion and contraposition. And of course, we can study relationship of the conversion, obversion, and contraposition with, for example, with Aristotle's square of opposition, or basically the properties of contrary, subcontrary, contradictory, which was presented at the start. So thank you for attention.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It's now time for questions. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have simple technical question. Yeah. In your slide where you estimate the degrees, it seems to me that instead of equality, you should have inequality. Even I. Yeah, here actually, because look, because you have supremum over all z, yeah, but actually this 0.8 is some computed value for a certain cut and not for all cuts, yeah, as far as I understood, yeah.
No. Basically, algorithmically, we do all the cuts, and we take the cut in which we get the higher degree. But I said in the way that if we take this cut, we get this value.
So you want to say that you showed us only the cut where the supremum, yeah, works, actually, yeah?
No. Basically, generally what you do is you can take like all possible the cuts or combination, but here is the supreme. So you will take the cut which will give you like the highest degree. And in that case, it's basically that you pick the all.
So okay, so yeah, you showed us one cut such that, yeah, the supremum, yeah, coincides with the value of this cut, yeah, right?
Yes.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Okay, maybe I will have just a side comment. I think like extending now to other contraposition, for example, it's a very good direction, but do you already have an idea how they generalize in terms of intermediate quantifiers?
Contraposition?
Yes, this will be very interesting.
Yeah, but it's like the contraposition, it's like quite, let's say, the mirror to the conversion. So it's the contraposition is invalid for these quantifiers, then it's valid for these quantifiers. We can limit the quantifier which then the capital A, and it's also invalid for the intermediate quantifiers because there is problem with the sizes.
Okay.
Yeah, but then there is also like some connection between contraposition, obversion, and conversion.
Okay, but it has not been yet fully studied. Okay, let's thank this.
It was studied in this like theory in classical logic.
Yes.
Studies very well.
Okay, let's thank the speaker once again. And now I'd like to invite Professor Willem Novak to give the last talk within this session, last but not least, entitled Generalized Syllogism with Intermediate Quantifiers, a few and several.
I have prepared for this talk have been already said, so I will not repeat them. But I think it's not a problem. So only general remark that quantifiers really is a phenomenon in natural language, and the general definition is that these are usually expressions, or at least words, which precede and modified nouns, and they specify quantity of specimens in the domain of discourse having a certain property. So these are most typical quantifiers. There are some generalization. I will speak about it on Friday. So this is an example that, for example, a few thick books on the bookshelf are very interesting. It is also important to note that intermediate quantifiers theory, the quantifiers are specific formulas of fuzzy type theory, and that unlike the original introduction by Zadek, who introduced the notion of fuzzy quantifier, we have to use in the quantifier theory measuring size of fuzzy sets using fuzzy measure. Because otherwise it doesn't work, especially when we come to infinite universes. We can have quantifier like the bottle is almost full and so on, and then measuring bottle must be by some real number and not natural number. This formula you have already seen, so only to recall that in fact we are doing this or using this existential quantifier, which gives or which requires the use of supremum, and the size of the universe of quantification is evaluated or it's measured by measure, which is finally evaluated. What is important is also the notion of presupposition, or in logical literature you can see also the expression that it is existential import. It simply is caused by logical properties. And here this presupposition in fact tells that in classical logic, this set in classical logic must be non-empty. In fuzzy set theory, it is also non-empty, but because existential quantifier is interpreted by supremum, it doesn't tell that there really does exist one concrete element having this property. These formulas you have already seen, so I will skip them. Only try somehow to remember these letters, because we are using these letters further. And now about new specific quantifiers, a few, a little, and several. According to literature and philosophical literature and also linguistic literature, the meaning of a few and several corresponds to more than one or two, but it is less than many. And we understand several as more than a few, so these are really two different, these are not synonyms. But the difference is not so big. A few could mean 2 or 3, several 3 or 4, but of course it depends on the number of elements of the universe or in context. This is for, say, small numbers when we would be speaking about people sitting in this room. When we will be speaking about millions of euros or billions of euros, which is now very popular, then a few is very much different number. They cannot mean 0. Consider, for example, several hens are running in the yard. This cannot mean that there is no hen in the yard. If it would be so, then I could say that almost everything would be true. I would say that there are dinosaurs sitting in this room, and I would say a few dinosaurs are sitting in this room, which would be true if a few could mean 0. So this non-zero is important property. And notice also that classical quantifier sum always means at least 1, but it can mean also all. So the definition of these two quantifiers, a few and several, is based on the similar formulas as we have already seen. The only important is to assure that we are considering small number without 0. Therefore, here is, I'm sorry for that. I didn't expect. Notice also that there is no formal difference between a few and a little. Simply the formula is the same, but the difference is in a model. It depends on what we are trying to quantify. If the universe of quantification is countable, then the quantifier a few construes a few. And if it is uncountable, like in the examples with the bottle, that it construes a little. Of course, between quantifiers, then we can prove these implications. So, for example, if several b's are A, then some b's are A. If a few b's are A, then several b's are A. This corresponds to the property which I mentioned, that several means a slightly more than a few, and so on. I think this is quite clear. And now about syllogisms. We start with the general, say, classification of syllogisms, which are divided into 4 figures. You can see these 4 figures. And these are, in fact, they root already to Aristotle, so more than 2,000 years ago. And this first assumption is called major premise. The second is called minor premise, and this is a conclusion. And then we distinguish between subject, predicate, and middle. And this can be in various ways interchanged, and from this we obtain the figures. These symbols Q, P1, P2, and so on are intermediate quantifiers. Now about existential import, I already mentioned it. So if we want, for example, to formalize directly the quantifier AAI, which means for all M, or all M have the property P, all S have the property M, and from this follows that there does exist S and P. Such a formula is not valid in classical logic. But we can prove that this formula is valid if we add here this existential import or presupposition. And really this formula formalizes the valid classical syllogisms AAI, where the second formula contains this presupposition. If we analyze this from the algebraic point of view, then A and B, C are truth values, then in fact we find that the validity of this syllogism is based on this equality, which does hold in BL logic and also in MV algebra, but does not hold in general. Studying various syllogisms based on figures 1 to 4, we can prove validity of these syllogisms, some of them with presupposition. So, for example, this is syllogisms AFF. It means if all M are P and a few S are M and a few, then we conclude then a few S are P. Similar syllogisms can be proved for figure 2, for figures 4. Very specific is figure 3. Figure 3 has this form, QMRP and QMRS. So M elements having property M are distributed between P and S. And now the question is whether there is some intersection. This syllogism, which is non-trivial, by non-trivial we mean that like both minor and major premise use non-classical quantifiers. So, for example, this syllogism is valid. But on the other hand, this syllogism is not valid. So we must be careful when using intermediate quantifiers in syllogisms. So a few M are P and almost all M are S. Such a syllogism is not valid. The reason is very simple. If we draw such a figure and we have this M and we notice that a few M are P and almost all, which is this part, are M, then of course then can have empty intersection, and therefore this conclusion is not true in a given model, and so in general it is not valid. Validity of non-trivial syllogisms are based on such a formula. And this formula, in general, it can be true in any model, provided that this sub-formula is 0. But of course, it is uninteresting. For us, it's interesting if it is non-zero. So we call this formula a common presupposition. In fact, it tells that there exists non-empty intersection among this fuzzy set and this fuzzy set. Algebraically, again, this validity of such a formula in truth values correspond to this inequality. And if this common presupposition has non-zero truth value in some model, then we obtain that strong intersection of these fuzzy sets is non-empty. We can prove validity of syllogisms with a few and several, but this always requires one of the quantifiers of the kind all. Coming from the previous formula with common presupposition, we come to this concept. We say that syllogisms of figure 3 is non-trivially true for these given two evaluative expressions. If in any model and for any assignment, if the truth value of this evaluation is greater than 0, and similarly for the evaluation of this fuzzy set is also greater than 0, then their intersection is also non-zero. It corresponds to what I have already shown here, that this formula in the given model or in any model has a non-zero truth value. Then the following syllogisms of figure 3 are non-trivially true. So notice that, for example, TT means most. So most M are S, most M are, it is here, yes, most M are P, and then some M are S. The corresponding combination of quantifiers few and many. It depends on the definition in a model of the corresponding extensions of evaluative expressions. So in this figure, you can see this is extension for small, this is extension for not small, and this is extension for extremely big. And these extensions have been constructed, in fact, from these linear functions by combination, by composition with these functions. And then these functions are determined by 3 parameters. Parameter A, parameter B, it should be here B, and parameter C. So for example, this function, everything which is below A is 0, which is something which is in between is has true value B, and starting from C, it is already has to it is or the modification leads to 1. And on the basis of composition, as I said, with this function and this function, we obtain these shapes of fuzzy sets. And if it is fulfilled that this strict inequality between these 2 parameters, negation of small, which is in fact here, and A for extremely big, which is the value before which everything for this extremely big is has true value 0. Then the corresponding syllogisms, which is in composition with many, is non-trivially true. So that's all. And to summarize, we recall the theory of formal intermediate quantifiers. We introduce definition of quantifiers, a few, a little, and several, and syllogisms with them. And we also discussed common presupposition for syllogisms of figure 3 and showed syllogisms which are non-trivially true, and the condition which assures that these syllogisms, when combined with a quantifier many, also are non-trivially true. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. Now it's time for questions. Okay.
2 items, yeah. The first refers to the talk of Martin, actually, yeah. If you remember, yeah, when he considered, yeah, the fuzzy rules, yeah, with equivalent assumptions and different consequences, and if Willem showed us the syllogism 3, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me, show us, please, yeah, just to see the analogy, yeah. Just the first where you have a picture, yeah, or yeah, here, yeah, yeah. Look, so it reminds me, yeah, what Martin considered, yeah, as a problem, because look, so the form is that the same assumption M, yeah, and different consequences P and S, yeah, and actually that is similar. So I will not go deeper, yeah, into the similarity. Probably, yeah, if we analyze, yeah, we can find common points. Yeah, also you show that so the some logical relationship, yeah, between consequences, yeah, in this form is not possible, yeah. So this means that probably, yeah, we can think about, yeah, the situation. I mean, in a wider context, yeah. This is just association, yeah. And the second, yeah, item is about, yeah, you know, so yeah, yesterday I told about Hilbert problems, if you remember. So I would like you to propose something like Porphyriov conjecture, yeah. And this is about, because, yeah, in some proofs, yeah, you referred to algebraic analogies, yeah, actually, yeah. So this somehow came to my mind, yeah, and this is a hypothesis, that if we have, yeah, a logical formula in implicative form, which is not a tautology, but it is satisfied satisfiable. Yeah, at least exists a model where it is true. Yeah. So can we find? I mean, the formula of say basic logic. Yeah, for example. Yeah, can we find or its extension, using the intermediate quantifiers that converts this satisfiable formula into tautology in using the intermediate quantifiers. So thank you. Yeah, that's the point of thinking. Yeah.
I cannot give some definite answer. It requires some thinking about it. If Martin wants to comment.
Yeah. You're right, Irena, but this is like a chaining of rules, because one of the consequences is moved to antecedents in the derived conclusion, which is another story. So there is definitely a relationship. There is definitely a relationship. It makes sense to focus on it, but this is really like a chaining towards, and that's a bit, I would say, more complicated task, I think. Yeah.
A relationship between consequences. Okay, so yeah, just
Okay.
you don't think.
Thank you very much for this nice discussion. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so let's thank the speaker once again. And unfortunately, this was the last talk, so unless there is some volunteer, we need to close the session. No volunteers. Okay, so thank you very much for participation and enjoy your lunch.